The air that morning in Virginia felt thick enough to breathe in, heavy with moisture and silence, the kind of silence that presses against your chest before something irreversible happens. You can almost hear it, the slow creak of wooden floorboards beneath tired feet, the distant hum of cicadas beginning their song before sunrise, unaware that inside a plantation house in the summer of 1856, a young woman's life was quietly being decided. She stood near the wall, hands folded so tightly her fingers had gone pale, eyes fixed on the floor not because she had been ordered to look down, but because lifting her gaze felt like too much. Looking up meant acknowledging what she already knew, that her future no longer belonged to her. You see, when we talk about slavery, we often picture the obvious horrors: chains, whips, blood, screams, and yes, those were real. But some of the most devastating moments of slavery happened in rooms like this one, in calm voices, behind closed doors, where decisions were made politely, efficiently, and without a hint of cruelty in the tone. Decisions that sounded reasonable to the men making them, yet shattered entire lives without leaving a visible mark. Her name was Eliza, or at least, that was the name later written into a plantation ledger, scratched in faded ink, surrounded by numbers and notes, as if she were no different from a mule or a plow. Eliza was 19 years old. She was tall for her time, strong-shouldered from years of labor, with intelligent eyes that noticed things she was never meant to question. But there was one thing that defined her more than anything else: a limp in her right leg, the result of a childhood fall that never healed properly. That limp followed her everywhere, and in 1856 Virginia, that single imperfection was enough to decide her fate. The word used to describe her was unmarriageable. Now pause for a moment and imagine what that word meant in her world. Marriage, for enslaved people, was not a promise of romance or happiness. It was survival, a fragile shield against the worst forms of abuse. A husband could be sold away at any moment, yes, but while he remained, he might stand between you and violence, share stolen moments of comfort, share food, share grief, share the unbearable weight of being owned. To be considered unmarriageable meant isolation. It meant vulnerability. It meant being alone in a system that thrived on breaking people apart. Across the room stood Eliza's father, Samuel. He was a carpenter, skilled and steady, respected among the enslaved community for his quiet intelligence and careful hands. Those hands had built cradles for white children who would grow up inheriting land, wealth, and people like him. Those hands had repaired doors that locked others into punishment rooms. And now, those same hands hung uselessly at his sides as he faced the most impossible decision of his life. The plantation owner spoke softly, almost kindly, as if discussing weather or crops. Eliza had reached an age where she needed to be assigned. But there was a problem. No white man wanted her in the house. No overseer wanted her in the fields. Her limp made her inefficient. Her sharp mind made her difficult. She didn't fit neatly into the system's categories. And systems like this one had no patience for what they couldn't easily control. But there is an option, the owner said. This is where the story turns darker. On the far edge of the plantation lived a man known simply as Moses. He was the strongest enslaved man on the property, broad-chested, scarred, capable of lifting loads that took two men. He was respected, feared, and deliberately kept isolated. Strength like his was useful, but dangerous. The owner believed that pairing Eliza with Moses would solve two problems at once. Moses would be given a woman, something to keep him compliant. Eliza would be placed where her body, at least, could still be used. Samuel was told to agree. Imagine being a father in chains, asked to give your daughter to a man she barely knew, not out of love, not out of choice, but because a system had labeled her defective. Imagine knowing that if you refused, punishment would follow, not just for you, but for her. Samuel stood silent for a long moment, the room thick with expectation. Then he looked at Eliza, just once. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She simply nodded. It was a small nod, almost invisible, but it carried understanding far beyond her years. She knew this wasn't her father's cruelty, it was the world's. So Samuel said yes. That night, Eliza lay on a straw mattress in the slave quarters, staring at the low wooden ceiling. Every crack in the beams seemed familiar, as if she were memorizing them. Her mother sat beside her, slowly braiding her hair. Her fingers trembled slightly and no words were spoken. What could be said when language itself felt useless? Each braid felt like a goodbye, to childhood, to safety, to the idea that her body belonged to her. Before dawn, Moses arrived. He stood in the doorway, his massive frame filling the space. In the pale early light, he looked more like a shadow than a man. Up close, he wasn't terrifying. His eyes were tired, deeply tired, the kind of exhaustion that comes from years of carrying more pain than anyone should. He didn't touch Eliza. He didn't speak. He simply sat down on the floor with his back against the wall, leaving space between them, as if afraid that even his presence might crush her. Moses hadn't chosen this either. Weeks passed in silence. They worked, ate, and slept within the narrow boundaries. Allowed to them. Eliza expected violence. She braced for it every night, heart racing at the sound of movement. But it never came. Moses slept facing the wall, leaving distance between them like an unspoken promise. Yet silence doesn't erase fear, and fear doesn't disappear just because harm hasn't arrived yet. Then one evening, after a brutal day in the fields, Eliza's leg gave out. She fell hard, dirt filling her mouth, pain shooting through her body. The overseer laughed, laughter that echoed louder than any whip. Moses saw it from across the field. Something inside him broke, not outwardly, not violently, but inwardly, in a way that changed him forever. That night, Moses warmed water over a small fire. He knelt beside Eliza and washed her injured foot. His hands, so often used for punishment and labor, were gentle, careful. Eliza began to cry, not from pain but from shock, from the sudden realization that kindness still existed in a world designed to erase it. That was the beginning of trust. Not love as stories like to sell it, not romance, but something quieter, survival woven with care, companionship born from shared captivity. In a system built to strip humanity away, even that was an act of rebellion. Months passed. Whispers spread. The owner noticed that Moses worked harder, steadier. Eliza found ways to contribute, mending clothes, tending children, listening. Listening became her greatest strength. People came to her with their fears, their grief, their secrets. She remembered names, dates, stories. In her mind, she built a record that no ledger could erase. Then the rumors began. The plantation was in debt. People were being valued, sorted, priced. Families whispered at night, voices trembling. Eliza understood what that meant. Separation, loss, promises broken without apology. One night, Moses spoke more than he ever had before. He told her about a river north of them, about people who helped others disappear. He didn't say the word escape, saying it felt too dangerous. Eliza listened carefully, and then she did something no one expected. She said no. She knew something Moses didn't. Her father was scheduled to be sold. Her mother was ill. If she ran, they would suffer for it. Sometimes the bravest choice isn't running. Sometimes it's staying and carrying the weight so others don't have to. In the spring of 1857, Samuel was sold. On the morning he left, he pressed something into Eliza's hand. A small wooden bird he had carved years earlier, smooth from time and touch. "Remember who you are," he whispered. That bird became her anchor. Years later, records show a freed woman named Eliza living near Richmond, listed as a caregiver and midwife, no husband named, no children recorded, just a note beside her name, respected. We don't know what happened to Moses. History often forgets men like him, strong, silent, consumed by labor until they vanish from the page. But Eliza endured, not because she was unbreakable, but because she refused to let the system decide who she was. And that's the part worth remembering. The word unmarriageable was meant to define her worth. Instead, it exposed the cruelty of the world that assigned it. Eliza was never broken. The system was. History is full of people like her, quiet, overlooked, reduced to footnotes. But if you listen closely, you can still hear them. In the creak of old floorboards, in the hush of early morning air, in stories passed down not because they were written, but because they mattered. And maybe that's the lesson that lingers, that even when everything is taken, choice, safety, dignity, there is still something no system can fully destroy. The ability to care, to remember, to remain human. So the next time history feels distant or inevitable, remember Eliza, standing in that room, hands clenched, silent but not powerless.